Thanks so much for that kind introduction, Lisa, and greetings, friends, from the Great Lakes family of Rotary. I'm just so delighted here today to share a little bit of the enthusiasm and the energy that we always feel at these PETS organizations. I alone cannot change the world. Am I up? I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. That's a quotation from a lady very small in stature, but a giant in the area of humanitarian aid. And I think that quotation aptly describes Rotary. And we would know the source of that quotation is Mother Teresa. My friends, if we all stood around a lake or a pond, and we all cast a stone across the waters, 1.2 million of us, can you imagine the tidal wave of good that could be done around this world to wash away all the poverty and all of the disease? That's the sort of power that you have in Rotary. And I want to talk today and share with you some information on how you have the power of one, how you have the ability to change the world. And I'm going to share with you some personal experiences of Rotarians I've been with, Rotarians I've met who did just that. Because in Rotary, it is not the A-shaped pyramid of a business structure with the president at the top and the managers and the workers at the bottom. I believe that Rotary is an inverted pyramid. It is the Rotarians who are at the top of this organization. And last night, Ravi shared with us his view that it's the Rotarians, it's the clubs who make things happen. Below that, we have the district team, the governors. Below that, we have our trustees, our directors, and our board of directors, and the RI president. It's the Rotarians, it's you, and it's you, and it's you who are at the top of this organization, because nothing has ever happened in Rotary unless it started with an idea from a Rotarian like you and I in a room just like this. Let me share with you some examples. A few years ago, I was in a home in Auckland, New Zealand, where a Rotarian told me that as a young lad this high, he had sat in that same living room and listened to his uncle and his father talk about Rotary ideas and Rotary projects. And they came up with an idea of having young business people go on an exchange around the world. They sent teams to England, to Germany, to France, to the USA, and they called the program ROTA, Rotary Overseas Travel Awards. And when that Rotarian's uncle came to Evanston as a Rotary International president, he brought with him that idea from the Rotarians in Auckland, New Zealand, and that is what we now know or have known as our Group Study Exchange Program, or our VTT program. All because a Rotarian shared an idea with his brother and started it as a club project and a district project. How many are familiar with the significance of the Rotary Club of Mabalacat, Philippines? Anybody? Do you want to share it, sir?
That's where Polio Plus started.
That's where Polio Plus started. Right on. I've been in that club 3 or 4 different times now. I had the pleasure of sitting and having dinner one night at their meeting with Dr. Benny Santos. Dr. Benny Santos shared the idea of inoculating poor children in the community as a club project. They would go out every Saturday morning and inoculate the children. And they got so successful, they recruited help from the local hospital, and the nurses would go with them. It spilled from a club project to a district project. Onwards, it grew across the nation in the Philippines. And then when they started the very first 3H project, Rotary International put out a call for project ideas that might be one they could do as the first project for a 3H grant. And so they accepted the proposal from the Philippines to inoculate children. My friends, the largest World Health Organization, the largest World Health Initiative that Rotary has ever done has put us on the map because one Rotarian shared an idea at a Rotary Club and another Rotarian shared it around the world. That has put us on the world stage, as was discussed earlier this morning when we had the talk on polio. That has put Rotary on the world stage, and you should be so proud of the organization that you're involved in and the gift you're giving to the world and to the children of this world. Easter Seals and Crippled Children was started by a Rotarian in Toledo, Ohio, who shared the idea with the Rotarian in Ontario, Canada. Anybody want to guess who the first chairman of the Easter Seals and Crippled Children campaign was? Would you believe it was your very own Paul Harris? Because he was a friend of the Rotarian in Toledo who came up with the idea. I'm not sure how many Probus clubs you have in this part of the world, but Probus, professional and business clubs, are a group that are young, I'll say young retired Rotarians who have retired from their business. They don't have the social opportunities that they did when they were working. And that too was started by a Rotarian in Burlington, Ontario, shared across Canada and northern US by a Rotarian in Cambridge, Ontario. All because a Rotarian shared an idea. And then one day in 1945, it was 49 Rotarians who helped establish the United Nations and the structure of the United Nations. I'm sure most of you are aware of that. Hands up those who are aware of that. Okay. Now, has anybody asked the question, or does anybody know why we got invited to be part of that meeting to begin with? Because of a Rotarian in Nashville, Tennessee. You see, this goes way back further than 1945. It was a Rotarian in Nashville, Tennessee who came up with the idea of International Institutes of Understanding. It was very successful in that area. It spread to Dallas, Texas, to Houston, Texas. And these international institutions of understanding were so successful, they were well known and renowned around the world that Rotary was doing the good work of promoting world peace back in the 1930s. And so when Winston Churchill and President Roosevelt decided to have this United Nations meeting, they said, we have to have Rotary at the table because they're already proving and they know what they're doing. And guess what? It was your very own Rotary Foundation who put up the seed money in the 1930s to support those international institutes of understanding. So really, Rotary has written the blueprint even for the United Nations. And when you look at the Charter of the UN and you look at the goals and objectives of Rotary, the meanings are almost identical. And why wouldn't they be? Because it was Rotarians who helped write it. And if you go to Cape Town, South Africa today, and you walk through the parks, you'll find a statue of one of the Rotarians who wrote the first draft of the Charter of the United Nations. So you should be very proud. And that, my friends, is why Rotary, that is why you have official status at the UN. And when you go to meetings there and you sit with the leaders of the UN, they talk to us about being their partners. We're not just a normal affiliate NGO. They talk to us about being the leading NGO in the whole United Nations. They are impressed by our actions, largely because of polio. And they say, we need to listen to you. But what they also say to us to come back and share with our Rotary friends is, please help us. You've proven that you can make traction. You can make the rubber hit the road. We had a lady in Côte d'Ivoire who organized a ceasefire in a conflict area for a day so we could go in and do polio inoculations. In fact, I was with her in Israel at the Zone Institute just a few months ago. She's the governor-elect now, and I'll be going to speak at her conference in Côte d'Ivoire in April 2016. But at that time, she was an average Rotarian, just like you and I. And yet she was able to go into a military-torn area and arrange for a ceasefire for a day for polio inoculations. Talk to me later and I'll tell you how she did it. And then we had a ceasefire, we heard about it yesterday when Ravi was introduced, for a weekend into a Tamil Tiger war zone. And a Rotarian, an average Rotarian at that day, who organized a ceasefire. So you know what the UN's thinking. They're saying to me, they're saying to Joe Loreni, our lead UN rep there, and the others, you Rotarians know how to do it. You've already got a ceasefire for a day. You've already got a ceasefire for a weekend. Please help us do a ceasefire for a week. Please help us do a ceasefire for a month. And then please help us do a ceasefire for a year. That is our challenge from the leadership at the United Nations. And some more things they asked us to share with Rotarians and our friends. Here are some of the things we can do to help the UN. You can do it, you can do it, you can do it in your club, in your community. Create public awareness about the world issues. Strengthen and scale up our already successful efforts. Everything we're doing is right as far as the UN's concerned, Everything we're doing is working well. They hope that we can do it more largely, more grand, bigger, better, more bolder, because the world needs our support. They hope we can continue to build literacy and education around the world in those areas that need it, because we all know that literacy is the pathway from poverty. And they want us to continue our exchange programs that promote tolerance and respect around the world. And lastly, and likely most importantly, we need to demand more accountability from our governments and our civil service people and our political leaders, because too many times they're coming out of their summit meetings or their UN meetings and they say what they think the media wants to hear, and then they go home and they don't do anything. And I come from Canada, and Canada is likely one of the poorer ones as well, because we are not living up to our obligations to the international world that we've committed to. In fact, right now, Canada is at less than half of what we committed to. And I'm sure that similar ones are in the U.S., but we need to take a hold of this. You and I have a power to make a difference through our elected representatives if we only take control of it and start speaking up. You know, you have a toolbox as an ordinary person to do extraordinary things through the leverage of Rotary. And that toolbox is your Rotary Foundation programs. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can make a difference in the world. Many of you are already involved in this, and I know that to a certain extent I'm preaching to the choir. But some people ask, well, how do you get involved in this project? How does it get started? Here's an example in the Philippines where I was taken to a school. The top left photo, you'll see children meeting out underneath a shade tree because they don't have enough classroom space. The blackboard's leaning up against the tree. They toured me around. They had a very simple project. That was to feed 85 malnourished children each day at school. $12, I think it was, a day, they figured. You know what? I almost had enough money in my pocket that we could have done that project on the spot. But we have to do it in a sustainable way. So if we had have just laid out the money and did the feeding program for 3 months like they requested, what would happen in the 4th month? They would be hungry again, right? So I stayed there the whole afternoon with the Rotarians, and I can't be a Canadian solution going to solve their problem. It has to be their interaction. They have to participate. It has to be their solution. So through a whole afternoon's discussion of me asking questions, planting seeds, cultivating those seeds, coming back around, finally after about 3 hours, I said, you know, I don't think we can do this project for 3 months. I think we've got to do it for at least a year. And here's what I think I've heard you saying. Is this what you're thinking? And so here's what we did. We did a Rotary Foundation matching grant, and we bought seeds, we bought fertilizer, we bought rakes, we bought hose, and we planted gardens. In fact, we even bought a little irrigation water pump system for them to water the gardens. And they integrated into the school curriculum nutrition and food, health and safety, how to grow food, how to harvest the food. And when I went back a year later, the city had even came and tore out a strip of sidewalk to make the schoolyard garden larger. And this was then in the 3rd growing season. My friends, you can't believe how proud the Rotarians were and the school children were to show me that garden when I went back. And of course, the sustainability was ongoing after Rotary withdrew. That was peanuts. The budget for that at the time was $500 from the Woodstock Club. My district put in $1,500. The Philippine district put in $1,000. Rotary Foundation matched $3,000. My friends, that is just the power of one Paul Harris Fellow to make a difference in the lives of 85 families. We had a ceremony that day. They asked me to go out front and have a photo. And then afterwards, every one of those 85 children lined up and came and gave me a hug and a kiss for what you had done on their behalf. Do you think that was a highlight of one of my Rotary visits? Absolutely, and some of you have got similar stories to share. We talk about magic grants or now global grants, and I get so fed up with everybody and all the frustrations that they seem to have doing these grants. The grants are really simple when it comes down to the process. If you got the signatures in the right place, you got the documents in place to support what you're doing, and you've got some now sustainability, it's not that difficult to make a difference and change the lives. And I'm going to prove to you how simple it is, because I'm going to do one right now on the spot. Do I have anybody in the audience who would be willing to donate or contribute $5 to the Rotary Foundation? Okay, ma'am. Come on up with your $5. While she's coming up, do I have anybody who would invest $10 in the foundation? Understanding, of course, sometimes investments do carry an element of risk. Okay, we got a fellow here. Okay, come on up, sir, with your money. And I'm just going to show you very quickly how simple it is to do a foundation matching grant. Okay, so we've got $5. Your club, ma'am?
Dearborn Heights.
Dearborn Heights. Thank you so much. So the Dearborn Heights Club want to do a project, and they've got $5. And what are they going to do, assuming they've got the paperwork all done, they've got their partner, what is the thing that they want to do? What's the first step once they got the paperwork done? Submit it to the district for DDF match if the district has budget to do that, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to prepare the $5. Okay, you want to just hold that? Now, for those of us who go on the road, we have special magic grant tricks, okay? So we got an empty bag here, and we're going to put that money in the bag, send it off to your district. Your district fairly prompt in responding to the grant request, okay? So let's see what they responded. What have you got?
2 5.
So is that a good return on our investment so far? So that's all for you. That's all for you.
Well,
Okay.
I think we should give it to the foundation.
Okay, just put it in the bag there. Okay, so we've got now $5 from the club, $5 from the DDF budget in their district, which is $10. Okay, now this is one that I bet you none of even our Rotary Foundation people have that just came from Evanston. But those of you who are allowed into the basement in the Evanston office know that we've got a big printing press there that prints all the money for the grants. And so when we go out and do projects, they just give us these little printing presses so that we can do the grants right on the spot. You have one of these, right, Steph? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take $10, okay? We're going to send that to Rotary Foundation in Evanston. We're going to ask them to match our grant, right? So tell the folks what you might have there.
I have a 20.
Is that a good return on your investment?
Yes, it is.
My friends, where can you put money into your favorite charity and get a 400% return on your investment? That is the amazing magic of your organization. But we do need your support to make that happen. And it's only through your encouragement of your club members, your friends, your neighbors, that we do that. And you know, we ask for every Rotarian every year to put in $100 or whatever. You know, that amount of money, all of us got it in our wallet. And in fact, we likely burn up more. We burn more money up on coffee and cigarettes than what we're asking for the Rotary Foundation. So it's time we got real about giving the money. I'm embarrassed to tell you that less than half of the Rotarians in this world donate to the Rotary Foundation. Come on, people. We got to give ourselves and set the example. We got to share with the others and give them the opportunity. And you know what? People will give to a cause. People will join a cause. People will not come to a Rotary dinner anymore. They're not interested in going to Rotary dinners. They're interested in doing things. They will give you the money. Ravi talked about it last night. Sell the cause, and you will get the money, and you will get the memberships. So please, please, if you do anything, inspire and motivate your troops to take the Rotary Foundation very seriously. Another toolbox, projects like the Wheel Foundation. You know what? you pick someone up out of the dirt that came in on a little skateboard and give them a wheelchair. You give them much more than a set of wheels. You give them freedom. You give them dignity. The fellow in the bottom right corner in the black shirt was so proud of the day he got that wheelchair. He told me that he had spent all his life between his bed and the couch in his home. And either his wife or his child had to stay and tend for his needs. His wife was the sole breadwinner. He was so proud to tell me that tomorrow morning he was going to hit the road in that new wheelchair and he was going to find a job to help his wife make a livelihood for their family. That is the sort of thing that you gave that person for $150. Literacy, as I said, the pathway to poverty. It's very important to the United Nations. It's very important to Rotary. And if I were to take you to the Smoky Mountains in the Philippines, you'd see children going through the garbage amongst broken bottles and needles. You'd see them scavenging for food. Can you imagine what some child had for lunch today was what you threw in the garbage yesterday? And there's programs that are now taking children from the dump. But you don't have to go to the Philippines to do that. You can go and put grade 3 dictionaries into your local schools, as many Rotarians do. So we don't all have to travel around the world. Or you can go to India and save the life of a child. And for $1,400, match that from the DDF and the Rotary Foundation, you can save the life of a child. My friends, we don't have to have a board of directors meeting to save a life. Any one of us, I'm sure in this room, if it was a priority, we could contribute $1,400 and save the life of a child. And can you imagine the gratitude you would have? I can take you with me to India. I can introduce you to the child whose life you saved. You would hold that child. You would have such a huge hug from the father you could hardly breathe. And the child would come most likely and raise in such a primitive, simple way their shirt or their dress to show you their scar as a way of showing their gratitude and that I'm okay. That is the power that you have in this room. And we don't need any more discussions or meetings to take action on that sort of thing. I was asked to go to Mexico to speak at a conference, and I was invited to go a few days early to participate in a medical mission, an eye medical mission. Rotarians went there as volunteers. The hospital donated their facilities. There was a matching grant done to pay for the medical supplies and the equipment. And it was amazing when we drove around that corner the very first day, and there was over 500 people in line hoping to get the eye surgery. So it took the doctors the first half day to screen out who could get the surgery and who wouldn't. And they decided one of the criteria would be they would only do people totally blind. And they would do one eye each in order to try and do more. They figured they could do 100. So in the end, we did 84 eye surgeries. 16 at the last couldn't go through because they had blood disorders or complications. But my friends, for $10,000, you gave 84 people eyesight. That's the power of 10 Paul Harris Fellows. That's the power that you have through Rotary to make a difference in the lives of someone you don't even know. So you are the power of one. And I urge each of you to go back home at the end of this weekend to inspire your friends, your neighbors. Not only be a gift to the world, but give your friends and your colleagues and your relatives the gift of Rotary, like someone gave you the gift of Rotary how many years ago. And I think each of us would totally agree that the biggest gift we ever got in the area of humanitarian aid and helping others was the day someone invited us to Rotary. Just ask them. Don't ask them to come to Rotary. Ask them about what their interests are. Tell them about what you do. Tell your Rotary story and say, is that something you might be interested in helping with? Is that something you may like to join us and help us? You are the power of one. You can make it happen, and you can have that ripple effect to make it happen with every other person in your club and in your district and around the world wherever you go. In conclusion, the number one question I always get asked is, of all your Rotary journeys and 33 years of Rotary experience, what would be one of the top experiences you've had? It would have to be the eye surgeries in Mexico. The lady that you see there with the glasses, I was on registration the first day she came in. Can you imagine being an 85-year-old lady going to have eye surgery to begin with? Can you imagine having it done from a doctor you didn't even know, you haven't even met yet? In fact, from a doctor who doesn't even speak your language? Can you imagine the fortitude that she must have had to go through that process? So I helped her get registered. I took her down the hallway, helped her on the gurney. I actually wheeled her into the operating room when I was with her during her surgery. I was so impressed with the strength that she had, even though she was very, very nervous. The next day, they were asked to return and have the bandages come off so the doctors could make sure the surgery had been successful. And that second morning when I was in the check-over room and I saw her coming down the hallway with her friend, she couldn't see obviously, so her friend was guiding her. There was some children running around as well. And I said to myself, I'm going to stay and see how she makes out. So of course, as soon as she heard my voice, she recognized me. We built a little rapport the day before. And her face just lit right up. My friend, she sat in that chair, and for $132, you gave that lady eyesight. But no amount of money will ever pay for the feelings I had when I saw those bandages come off and she saw her 3 grandchildren for the first time in her life. Thank you so much. Thank you.